Hey everyone, welcome back. Johnny B here with Johnny B Codes, and this is our 30 Days of API Challenge. This is day 10. In the last lesson, we got our UI set up for our little bar graphs down here, and in this video, this should be the end result. We should be able to say get cat fact, and we are going to hit our Clarify API endpoint and retrieve some predictions on what is in the image. And you can see here that those are being displayed right here. We see here kitten 100%, domestic 92, wildlife 91. And yeah, so it's pretty cool. And they animate really nice. It's pretty cool. All right, so let's get started. So first thing we're going to need to do is create our network request. So I'm going to open up a new tab here and then open that up. And oh, if you're wondering what that shortcut is, it's Command-Shift-O. That'll open up a search that you can then use to kind of search for files in your project. Super helpful. So when your project gets really big, you don't have to go diving into a bunch of folders. You can just do a quick search like that and then open it up. Okay, here we go. So we are going to go ahead and create a new function. This is going to be, let's go ahead and call this just a get cat. So we're going to kind of call these, let's see, where's my simulator? I'm going to call these tags, kind of like if you had like a word cloud or kind of like in a blog where you have categories. So let's just call those tags, get cat image tags. And we are going to copy the contents of our get cat breeds function because that's going to be pretty similar since we already have the headers stuff set up here. So I'm going to just go ahead and paste that. Very good. And we need a completion handler as well. So I'm going to just copy that from that function as well. Copy and paste. And let's go ahead and set up our URL and our headers and talk about how we do the body in our URL session. So opening Postman back up, I'm just going to copy this whole URL right here. And I'm just going to paste it right here. All right, so we have our URL, we have our model ID right here. We're going to need our API key. So either you can grab that either here in Postman if you have it, or head back to your Clarifai app portal. I'm gonna grab it from the headers right here. Just copy that. Back to Xcode. Here's our API key. And we have our URL request. That's good. Set the value of our API key for the header field. Now remember, this is a little bit different. This one is authorization. Paste that and save. And now we have our task with our URL session data task. All right, so this looks good. But first, what we need to do now is make sure that this URL request is a post request. So the way we do that is we can say URL request dot HTTP method is equal to, and then capitalized POST, post. There we go. And now since it's a post request, we probably want to add some data. So let's go ahead and create that data. Jumping back to our Postman request, we can come over here and check out the body that we passed in. And I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to say let JSON. And the way that we can create post bodies in Xcode is we use dictionaries, okay? So this is gonna be a dictionary of type string and any. And then I'm going to paste what we had in Postman, but I'm gonna comment it out. This is just kind of to be a guide for how we're gonna write this. So we're gonna be using, instead of curly braces, we're going to be using just square brackets since this is a dictionary. And our first one here, we have inputs. I'm going to say inputs, and then that's going to be colon. And then we have, after that inputs, we have data. But this is an array, so we have to have another square brackets. And then we can have data. And then another pair of square brackets. And then image. And then finally, one more pair of square brackets. And we have URL of type. And then this is going to be a URL that we're going to pass as a parameter right here. So I'm going to say image URL of type string. So when we call this function, we're going to pass in an image URL to pass to Clarify to do the analysis on that URL. So I'm going to say image URL. And okay, here we go. All right, so if you start getting some errors once we start calling this function, it's very probable that this part isn't 100% correct. So just double check that you have all these square brackets in the correct place. I know it's kind of a pain, but we have an opening one here. Then we have inputs, and I think this is probably the most likely place that people will get messed up, is that this is an array. So we have two square brackets right here, and then the data, image, URL all nested. All right, so there we have our body, our JSON that we're going to send. But if we try to attach this, if we say URL request dot body, you'll see that it says here the data sent as the message body of a request, such as for an HTTP post request, but it wants data. Okay, so what we have to do is we're going to turn this right here into data, and we can do that by saying, using a JSON serializer. So I'm going to say let JSON data equal try question mark JSON serialization, and we're going to turn that into data. And we're just going to say with JSON object, and we're going to pass in that JSON right there. And that should be good. So now we can add this JSON data. I'm just going to delete this right here. Now we can add this JSON data as the post body. So I'm going to say URL request dot HTTP body is equal to JSON data. Very good. All right, I'm going to save that. And the next thing I want to do is, up until now, we've been passing back primitives in our completion handlers, arrays of strings, UI images. I guess they're not all primitives, but kind of foundation classes. With this one, I want to introduce our own model class. Okay, so we're going to create a model to contain the data that we get back in these concepts. Okay, and it's going to be a very simple one. We're just going to have the name and value. So let's go ahead and do that. Right here, I'm going to right click and say new file, and this is just a Swift file. I'm going to say next, and we're going to save this, and I'm going to call this Clarifai cat, and create. Then I'm going to say struct, and this is Clarifai cat, and we have just the two properties. We have let name equal to, or of type string, and then let let's say probability be of type, and I think let's go CG float. Oh, and I think we need a UI kit for that. There we go. All right, so pretty simple, but what we can do with that now is if we go to our network service for this getCatImage tags, instead of returning an array of string, we can return an array of clarify cats. All right, so we have all of this set up. We've got our URL, we got our API key in the header, we've created our body post, or our post body, and we've turned that into JSON data that we can attach as the HTTP body. And now we are making the request. We're sending this request off to our Clarify endpoint. So checking errors, that's all good, that's all fine. We get our data. And then finally in here, we are going to get our data. And with this one, let's see here, we are going to cast it not as an array of dictionaries, because if we check out Postman, remember this is being returned as a single large parent JSON object. All right, so this is going to be cast as just a regular dictionary of type string and any. And let's go ahead and rename this. So I'm just going to call this Clarify data. And then we're going to go ahead and get rid of the rest of this. Here we go. Okay, so this right here represents this whole big JSON object. And we are really only interested in this array of concepts, which is nested fairly deeply. So we're gonna have to kind of drill down and get to the concepts here. So the first level down is we need this outputs array here, okay? So let's go ahead and grab that. So I'm gonna say guard let outputs equal to, and we're gonna say clarify data. And then the key is outputs. And we need to cast that as a array, because if we take a look here, it's an array of JSON objects. Even though there's only one object in there, it's still an array. So we say array of type string and any, else return. So now we have this part. The next thing that we want is right here, the data. So we're going to get that next. We're going to say guard let outputs data equal. I'm going to say outputs. And since this is an array, we're going to access the 0 index, the first object, and then the key, which is again data right here. So I'm going to say data, and this is just a single object, so string any, else return. And I know I could put all of these in one guard let, but sometimes I think that just gets a little bit messy. And so finally, we are down to the concepts. So we can finally grab our concepts here. So I'm going to say guard let concepts equal outputs data, and then concepts. And this is an array of string any data else return. There we go. And now we have our array of concepts. So this is what we have in this variable right here. So what we're going to do is we are going to now loop through this data, create instances of our Clarify cat model that we created, and then return that whole array. So we're going to need an array here. So I'm going to say var clarify cats is equal to an array of clarify cat, clarify cat, initialize that, And then we're going to loop through the concepts. I'm going to say for concept in concepts. And we are going to grab from this each of these dictionaries the name and the certainty. So I'm going to say let name equal concept, and the key is name. And we're going to cast that as a string and provide a default value of just an empty string. Then we're going to say let certainty equal concept, and the key for that is value. And we're going to cast that as a CG float and give it a default value of 0.0. And then we're going to instantiate a new instance of our Clarifai cat. So I'm going to say let new cat equal Clarifai cat, and we get our constructor here, our initializer, and we're going to say name and certainty. A little bit of inconsistency with naming there. That's okay. So I'm going to say clarify cats.append new element new cat. There we go. So what we're doing here is we're looping through all of the results that we get in our concepts array, and we're grabbing out of it the name and the value. Then we are initializing a new cat object from our Clarifai cat model. And then we're adding that to our Clarifai cats array that we have here. And once we have that, we're done. We're going to dispatch this back to the main thread and call our completion handler. So I'm going to say dispatch queue.main.async and completion clarify cats. Very good. All right, so let's go ahead and save this. But there is one little problem. So let's go back to our view controller. Not really a problem, just some refactoring that we need. We want the image URL that we get when we create this image. Right now, the way that we have it set up is we have this function download cat image, and that makes two API calls. The first one gets the image URL. The second gets the image data. And what we have returned to us here is just an image. We need the image URL as well. So we're just going to refactor a little bit here. Our download, oh no, it's this one here, the download cat image. Instead of just returning the image, we also want the image URL. So we can just add another parameter to our completion handler here. So I can say UI image and a string. And then right here with our completion, we'll say image, comma, image URL. Then if we save that, come back to our view controller, we'll have a little bit of an error here. It's going to say we need another argument. So I'm going to say image and image URL. And let's try building that and make sure everything builds. Good, we got a build successful. So now when we click on get cat fact, we're going to get our cat fact. We're going to make this call to our download cat image, which downloads the cat image URL using our get cat image URL function, and then downloads the image data. Once that's both done, we're going to pass back the image and the image URL. So then here in our view controller, we now have access to the image URL as well. So we can then call network service .instance get cat image tags. We're going to pass in our image URL, and then we're going to call our completion handler, and we're going to call that cats in here. And first off, let's just go ahead and print out our cats, make sure everything's working. We've written a lot of code without being able to really test it yet. So let's go ahead and save that and run and see if we forgot anything. All right, gonna clear this and then click on get cat fact. And ooh, looks like we're working. We're getting back results here. Name cat, probability 99.9. Name pet, probability. Very cool, very cool. And you'll see here that the results come back in from the highest probability to the lowest probability. And we're going to use that once we get our bar graphs going. All right, so perfect. Our network call is working. And before we go ahead and finish up with our graph data, let's recap one more time what it is that we are doing with this post request, okay? So with a post request, you need to set the method, the HTTP method here. So we set it to post. We have some data that we are going to be attaching to the HTTP body, which expects data. So we have to turn that into the type of data that it's expecting. And then we make the call. And the parsing stuff is stuff that we've done a bunch of times already, so I'm not going to go over that. But yeah, we're looking good here. So let's go ahead and now, instead of just creating random values here, what we're going to do is we're going to actually plot the probability and display the name for the three concepts that we get out of this array. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to pass into our plot bar graphs data function here an array of the Clarifai cats. So I'm going to say array of Clarifai cat. I'm going to save that, and right here we are going to instead call plot bargraph data and say cats. Very good. Just going to do a little bit of cleanup here. All right, so now we don't need these random widths anymore. I'm going to go ahead and, and we need a self here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these. And we're going to need the image width as a reference. I'm going to create a constant for that, let image width, and this is the image of the cat image that we have here. So I'm going to say cat image view dot frame dot width, and you'll see why we need that here in a minute. And then we're going to need a reference to our three cats that we're going to use. So we're going to grab those out of our cats, and we're going to do that using a method called random element and then last, and all of those return an optional cat, an optional object. So we're going to use guard here. So I'm going to say guard let cat1 equal and cats dot random element. So this is an awesome method that they added to arrays some time back. It returns a random element of the collection. And so we're just going to get a random element. Then we're going to have our second cat. Cat2 is equal to cats dot, and this is also going to be a random element. It's possible that we get duplicates, but I think that'll be okay. And then finally for cat3, I want to get the last one because the last one is the lowest probability. And you'll see here that we don't get a ton of variation for most of these images. This one goes from 93% to pretty much 100%. So our bar graphs don't change a whole ton, but just to make sure that we have one that changes at least more than the others, I'm going to grab the last one here because that one has the lowest probability and the biggest change between all of them. So I'm going to say cats dot last, and then else return. That should never fail, but just in case. And we have cat1, cat2, and cat3. Oh, I forgot my lets here. There we go. All right, so now we have cat1, cat2, and cat3. So what we want to do is we are going to, our new widths is going to be, you'll see that these probabilities here are all from 0 to 1. So if we multiply the probability by the image width, that will give us a percentage of the width of the image. And so what we're going to do is for each of these, we're just going to say cat1 dot certainty, or what did I call it? Probability times the image width. And do that for each of these. cat2 dot probability times image width, and cat3 dot probability times the image width. Save that, and let's go ahead and run that. And what we should see is that we run this, and each time we see some changes in our bar graphs. Hey, there we go, looking good. Nice, nice. All right, so the final thing that we need to do is get our labels showing. So what we're gonna do is I'm going to delete this and redo it so we get the closure. So I'm gonna say UI view dot animate with duration, and this time make sure you get the one with the completion handler. And our time interval is still 0.5. We get the code, but this time we want the completion, but we don't really need that Boolean, so I'm just going to replace it with a underscore. And then here we're still going to say self.view.layout if needed. But then here in the closure, so this runs right after the animation is complete. Runs after animation complete. We're going to set the text for our 3 labels, okay? So I'm gonna say self dot bar 1 label dot text is equal to, and we'll do some string interpolation here, and then another string interpolation. So just kind of making myself a template here. Gonna paste that 2 more times. Self.bar 2 label, self.bar 3 label. And so we're gonna have here the cat1.name. Here we're gonna have cat2.name. And here we have cat3.name. And then here we're gonna have the probability. But right now, let's go ahead and just put that in for now. So cat2 dot probability and cat3 dot probability. Whoopsie. Probability. All right, so let's save this and run it, and you'll see the very last thing that we need to fix. So we say get cat fact, and we should see displayed here pet, animal, downy, but we have these in decimal format, long decimal format. We would like to have these in percentage format. So we could do that right in here, but I think a better way is to create what is called a calculated property in our model. So I'm going to come over here, open up a new tab, and go back to our Clarifai cat. And to create a calculated property, we say var percentage. So you give it a name, then you declare a type that you want it to be. So what we want to end up with is just a string that says, 88%, 99%. And the way we do that is we have to return a string. I'll just do an empty string to get rid of that error. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the CG float, and we're going to use a class called number formatter to convert that into a percentage string. So let's do this. We're going to say let formatter equal number formatter. You can see here it says a formatter that converts between numeric values and their textual representations. So what we want is formatter.number style is equal to, and you can see here that you have a whole bunch. This is very useful when you're dealing with a whole bunch of kinds of numbers. You can do currency conversions, decimal, ordinal, percent, scientific. What we want is percent. And then I'm going to say formatter.maximum fraction digits, and I'm just going to set that to 0. So we're just going to have whole numbers, not like 88.5%. It'll just be 88%. And then we need to say So this number formatter, it deals with NS numbers. We need to convert our float into a NS number. So I'm going to say let certainty number equal NS number. And if you do check out the initializers, you'll see that we can do it with doubles, ints, bools, doubles, floats, and we have a CG float though. So what we're gonna do is we need to do one more cast. So I'm gonna say float and then pass in certainty. Or I'm sorry, probability. There we go. All right, so now we have an NS number that we can pass into our formatter. So I can say, now we can say return formatter dot string from the NS number, and that is certainty number. So now when we save this, we can come back. Let's see here, formatter dot string. Oh, we need to provide a default value. So our default value we'll say is 0% in the off chance that that fails. And then we can come back to our view controller. And now instead of cat1.probability, we can call cat1.percentage. And this returns that calculated property. And now when we save and run this, we say get cat facts, and boom, there we go. Livestock 87%, no person 98%, livestock 87%. All right, so Clarifai thought that these were all chickens, it looks like, and they kind of look like it. But yeah, so one more thing that I want to do is I want to capitalize the name part. So I'm going to say cat1.name.capitalized for each of these. And there we have it. One more run. Get cat fact. And there we go. Looking real good. Whew. All right. I know this video ran pretty long, but hopefully you enjoyed creating these bar graphs, animating, working with the Clarifai API. You can do a whole ton of stuff like like the brochure said, the possibilities are endless when you're dealing with images and machine learning and you want to create some sort of data visualization for those images. So hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all in the next one.